Picture this. You're sitting in your office, scrolling through emails, when suddenly your phone rings. It's the biggest client your company has ever landed, and they're asking one simple question that makes your blood run cold. Where's Marianne Thompson? We specifically requested the CEO's daughter for this project. The only problem? Your own team just excluded you from that exact same project 3 hours ago, telling you that you weren't qualified enough. And now, as you're about to find out, that decision is going to cost them everything. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Marianne Thompson, and 6 months ago, I thought I had the worst job in corporate America. Turns out, I was wrong. I had the most dangerous one. Let me paint you the picture of Hartwell Marketing Solutions, the digital agency my father built from nothing in downtown Seattle. When I say built from nothing, I mean it literally. Dad started this company in our garage 22 years ago with a borrowed laptop and a dream to help small businesses compete with the big players. Now we're pulling in 8 figures annually with offices spanning 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking Elliott Bay. But here's the thing about being the CEO's daughter at a company you didn't build yourself. Everyone assumes you're there because of nepotism, not talent. And honestly, for a long time, I wasn't sure they were wrong. I started at Hartwell 3 years ago, fresh out of Northwestern with a marketing degree and 0 real-world experience. Dad insisted I work my way up from the bottom, which meant I spent my first year doing data entry, coffee runs, and sitting in on meetings where nobody asked for my opinion. The message was clear: prove yourself or get out. So I did exactly that. I worked 60-hour weeks, took on projects nobody else wanted, and slowly started earning respect from my colleagues. By year 2, I was leading small campaigns. By year 3, I was heading up our social media strategy division and bringing in clients worth 6 figures annually. Which brings me to last Tuesday morning, when everything went sideways. I was in my usual spot at the conference table, 3rd seat from the left, close enough to the action, but far enough from Dad's executive chair to maintain some professional distance. Our creative director, Janet Rodriguez, was presenting our pitch strategy for the Henderson account, potentially the biggest client we'd ever landed. Henderson Luxury Automotive wasn't just any car company. They were the kind of client that could transform a mid-sized agency like ours into a major player overnight. We're talking about a 3-year contract worth $12 million with the possibility of expansion into their international markets. Landing Henderson would mean hiring 50 new employees, upgrading our tech infrastructure, and finally competing with the Madison Avenue giants. The Henderson family specifically wants a fresh perspective on their brand identity, Janet was saying, clicking through her presentation slides. They're looking to appeal to younger luxury buyers while maintaining their heritage appeal to established customers. I leaned forward, genuinely excited. This was exactly the kind of challenge I'd been preparing for my entire career. Luxury brands targeting millennial and Gen Z consumers, that was my specialty. I'd written 3 research papers on this exact topic in graduate school and had successfully executed similar campaigns for 2 of our smaller automotive clients. I'd love to contribute to this project, I said, trying to keep the eagerness out of my voice. I've got some ideas about cross-platform storytelling that could really resonate with their target demographic. The room went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet where everyone's considering your brilliant suggestion, but the uncomfortable kind where you realize you've said something wrong and you're not sure what. Janet exchanged a look with our account director, Michael Chen. Then Michael cleared his throat and delivered the words that would haunt me for the rest of the week. Actually, Marianne, we think this project might be a bit too complex for your current skill level. Henderson is extremely high stakes, and we need our most experienced team members handling every aspect of the campaign. I felt like I'd been slapped. I've successfully managed the Riverside Motors campaign, which brought in $2 million in revenue, and the Brooks dealership project exceeded client expectations by 40%. Those were much smaller accounts, Janet added. Her tone is patronizing in a way that my teeth clench. Henderson is playing in a completely different league. We can't afford any learning curves or experimental approaches. I looked around the table, hoping to find at least one ally.
Sarah Kim from our digital team was studying her laptop screen intently. Tom Bradley from accounts receivables suddenly found his coffee cup fascinating. Even my father, who I expected might at least acknowledge my track record, remained silent. We've already assigned the core team, Michael continued. Janet will lead creative, I'll handle account management, and we're bringing in Marcus Webb as our strategy consultant. The presentation to Henderson is scheduled for Thursday. 2 days. They were giving themselves 2 days to prepare for the most important pitch in company history, and they didn't want me anywhere near it.
I understand you want your best people on this, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, but I really think my perspective could add value to the campaign. What if I just contributed to the research phase? Marianne, my father finally spoke, and his voice had that CEO tone that brooked no argument. The team has made their decision. I'm sure there are other projects that could benefit from your attention. Other projects? Like I was being handed busy work to keep me occupied while the real professionals handled the important stuff. I left that meeting feeling like I'd been demoted without actually being demoted. The message was crystal clear. Despite 3 years of proven results, despite bringing in millions in revenue, despite working myself nearly into the ground to prove I belonged there, I was still just the CEO's daughter playing pretend at a real job. For the next 2 days, I watched from the sidelines as Janet, Michael, and Marcus worked frantically on the Henderson pitch. They commandeered the main conference room, ordered catered lunches, and held strategy sessions that went late into the night. Every time I walked past that room, I felt a stab of resentment mixed with genuine curiosity about what approach they were taking. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of Seattle drizzle that makes everything look gray and depressing. I was at my desk, trying to focus on a campaign brief for a local restaurant chain, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. Hartwell Marketing, this is Marianne. Miss Thompson, this is Elizabeth Henderson from Henderson Luxury Automotive. My heart stopped. Elizabeth Henderson? As in Henderson, the client we'd been preparing to pitch to in approximately 4 hours. Miss Henderson, I managed, trying to sound professional despite the fact that my pulse had just kicked into overdrive. How can I help you? I'm calling because we've had to make a last-minute adjustment to our meeting today. We've decided to move forward with your agency's proposal based on our preliminary discussions, but we have one specific request. I grabbed a pen, ready to take notes on whatever accommodation they needed. More time for the presentation, a different meeting location, additional materials. We'd like Marianne Thompson to be the lead strategist on our account. The pen slipped from my fingers and clattered onto my desk. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? We want you specifically assigned to our campaign. Our research team was very impressed with your work on the Riverside Motors account, and your approach to multi-generational luxury marketing is exactly what we're looking for. In fact, when we first reached out to your father about working with Hartwell, we specifically requested you by name. The world seemed to tilt sideways. You requested me by name? Absolutely. Your reputation in the automotive luxury space is quite impressive for someone so early in their career. We're particularly interested in your insights on authentic storytelling for heritage brands targeting younger demographics. I stared at my computer screen, trying to process what I was hearing. Henderson Luxury Automotive, the biggest client in our company's history, had specifically asked for me. Not Janet with her 15 years of experience, not Michael with his impressive client roster, not Marcus with his strategic consulting background, me. Miss Henderson, I said slowly, I'm honored that you'd consider me for this role, but I should mention that our team has prepared a comprehensive presentation for this afternoon's meeting. Oh, wonderful. We're looking forward to it. But we do want to confirm that you'll be leading the account moving forward. That was one of our primary criteria for selecting Hartwell over the other agencies we've been considering. Other agencies? Suddenly, this conversation had taken on an entirely different weight. Henderson hadn't just been shopping around for marketing firms, they'd been comparing multiple agencies, and their decision to go with us hinged partly on my involvement.
I'll need to discuss this with our team, I said, my mind racing through the implications of this phone call. Can I call you back within the hour? Of course. But, Miss Thompson, I do want to emphasize how important your participation is to us. We've done our research, and your innovative approach to luxury brand positioning is exactly what Henderson needs to capture the next generation of luxury car buyers while honoring our 70-year heritage. After I hung up, I sat in my chair for a solid 5 minutes, staring at the phone and trying to figure out what had just happened. The team that had excluded me from this project because I wasn't experienced enough had apparently landed the client specifically because the client wanted to work with me.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The irony was so thick, I could practically taste it. I walked to the main conference room where Janet, Michael, and Marcus were doing final preparations for their presentation. Through the glass walls, I could see them arranging materials, testing the projector, and rehearsing their talking points. They looked confident, organized, and completely unaware that their entire strategy was about to implode. I knocked on the door and stepped inside. "We need to talk." Janet looked up from her laptop, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Marianne, we're in final prep mode here. Whatever it is can wait until after the Henderson meeting." "Actually, it can't." I closed the door behind me. "I just got off the phone with Elizabeth Henderson herself." The room went dead silent. Marcus stopped shuffling through his notes. Michael's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. Janet's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Why would Henderson be calling you?" Michael asked slowly. I took a deep breath, trying to figure out how to deliver this bombshell diplomatically. "Because they specifically requested me to lead their account. Apparently, when they first approached Dad about working with Hartwell, they asked for me by name." The silence stretched so long I could hear the ventilation system humming overhead. Then Marcus laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter sound you make when the universe plays a particularly cruel joke on you. "You're kidding?" Janet said flatly. "I wish I were." I pulled out my phone and showed them Elizabeth Henderson's number in my recent calls. She said they were impressed with my work on Riverside Motors and my approach to multi-generational luxury marketing. She also mentioned that my involvement was one of their primary criteria for choosing Hartwell over other agencies. Michael sat down heavily in his chair. "Other agencies?" Apparently, we weren't their only option. And according to Henderson, one of the main reasons they're going with us is because they want to work with me specifically. Janet's face had gone through several color changes, settling somewhere around pale green. "But we've spent the last 2 days preparing a comprehensive strategy presentation." "Which I'm sure is excellent," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "But there's been a fundamental miscommunication somewhere. They're expecting me to be the lead strategist on their account." Marcus closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "So what exactly are you proposing here, Marianne? That we scrap our entire presentation and hand the project over to you?" The accusation in his voice was unmistakable, and I felt my diplomatic approach starting to crack. "I'm not proposing anything, Marcus. I'm telling you what the client just told me. They want me leading their campaign." "This is insane," Janet muttered, running her hands through her hair. "We've been working around the clock on this pitch. The presentation is in 3 hours." "And I'm sure we can still do the presentation," I said, "but we need to figure out how to restructure the team dynamics to align with what Henderson is expecting." Michael looked up from his phone, where he'd apparently been frantically typing. "I just sent a message to your father. We need him involved in this conversation immediately." 5 minutes later, Dad walked into the conference room looking like a man who'd just been told his company was simultaneously winning the lottery and being audited by the IRS. He surveyed the tense faces around the table before settling his gaze on me. "Marianne, walk me through exactly what Henderson said." I repeated the phone conversation word for word, watching my father's expression grow more complicated with each detail. When I finished, he sat down at the head of the table and rubbed his temples. "This is my fault," he said.
When Elizabeth Henderson first contacted me 6 weeks ago, she mentioned being familiar with our work on automotive accounts. I assumed she meant our agency's work collectively. I didn't realize she was referring specifically to Marianne's campaigns. 6 weeks ago? Janet's voice cracked slightly. You've known about their interest for 6 weeks? I've been in preliminary discussions with them, yes. They were evaluating several agencies, and I wanted to make sure we had our strongest possible team ready before we moved forward with formal presentations. Our strongest possible team? I repeated slowly, which apparently didn't include the person they specifically wanted to work with. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dad looked genuinely uncomfortable. Not CEO uncomfortable, but father uncomfortable, like he was realizing he'd made a mistake that affected both his business and his daughter.
I made an assumption, he admitted. When the team recommended keeping this project limited to our most senior staff, I supported that decision because I thought it was in the company's best interest. And now? I asked. Before Dad could answer, Michael's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and his face went white. It's Henderson's office. Answer it, Dad said immediately. Put it on speaker. Michael accepted the call, his hand shaking slightly as he pressed the speaker button. This is Michael Chen at Hartwell Marketing. Mr. Chen, this is Robert Hayes, Elizabeth Henderson's assistant. I'm calling to confirm the details for this afternoon's meeting. Miss Henderson wanted to make sure that Marianne Thompson will be presenting as the lead strategist. The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Michael looked desperately around the table, his mouth opening and closing without producing any sound. Dad leaned forward toward the phone. This is David Thompson, CEO of Hartwell. Mr. Hayes, we're very much looking forward to this afternoon's presentation. Could you clarify exactly what role Miss Henderson is expecting Marianne to play in the campaign? Certainly, Mr. Thompson. Miss Henderson was quite specific about this. She wants Miss Thompson as the primary strategist and client liaison for the Henderson account. She mentioned being particularly impressed with the multi-platform approach Miss Thompson used for the Riverside Motors campaign, and she's interested in adapting that methodology for Henderson's brand repositioning initiative. I watched Janet's carefully constructed presentation strategy crumble in real time. The multi-platform approach Hayes was referencing wasn't just some buzzword, it was a specific framework I'd developed for integrating traditional luxury marketing with social media engagement and experiential brand events. It was the cornerstone of my Riverside Motors success, and apparently, it was exactly what Henderson wanted for their campaign. We'll make sure Miss Thompson is positioned appropriately for this afternoon's meeting, Dad said diplomatically. Excellent. And Mr. Thompson, I should mention that Miss Henderson has been following your daughter's work for some time. She was quite impressed with the case study Miss Thompson presented at the Pacific Northwest Marketing Summit last year. My stomach dropped. The Pacific Northwest Marketing Summit? I'd presented my research on heritage luxury brands and millennial consumer behavior at that conference, but it had felt like a relatively small industry event. I had no idea anyone from Henderson had been in the audience. We'll see you at 2 o'clock, Dad concluded, and Michael ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. Janet was staring at her laptop screen like it might spontaneously combust. Marcus was methodically organizing his papers with the mechanical precision of someone trying very hard not to lose his temper. Michael looked like he was calculating how many hours of work had just become obsolete. Well, Dad said finally, this changes things significantly. You think? The sarcasm slipped out before I could stop it, and I immediately regretted it. This situation was complicated enough without me making it worse. But Dad nodded, apparently taking my sarcasm as a fair assessment of the situation. Janet, what's the core framework of your presentation strategy? Janet cleared her throat, professional composure returning despite the circumstances. We've focused on Henderson's heritage positioning, emphasizing their 7 decades of luxury craftsmanship while introducing contemporary design elements to appeal to younger buyers. The campaign centers around their tagline, Legacy Redefined, with integrated print, digital, and event marketing components. Solid approach, Dad said. Marianne, how does that align with your multi-platform methodology?
I found myself in the surreal position of evaluating my colleagues' work on a project they'd explicitly excluded me from. The heritage angle is definitely the right direction, but I think there's an opportunity to go deeper into experiential storytelling. Instead of just telling younger consumers about Henderson's legacy, we could create immersive experiences that let them feel connected to that heritage while seeing themselves as part of the brand's future. Marcus looked up from his papers. What kind of experiences? Despite everything that had happened, I felt that familiar spark of excitement when discussing campaign strategy. Think beyond traditional test drives. What if we created heritage journey events where potential customers could experience different eras of Henderson's design evolution? Or digital storytelling campaigns where current Henderson owners from different generations share how the brand fits into their lives? That's actually brilliant, Michael said quietly, and I could see him mentally restructuring the entire presentation approach.
Janet nodded slowly. We could integrate that framework with our existing creative concepts. The legacy redefined tagline still works, but the execution becomes much more interactive and personal. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like we might be able to work together instead of against each other. What if we present it as a collaborative approach, your strategic foundation with enhanced experiential elements? Dad checked his watch. We have 2.5 hours to restructure this entire presentation. Can we make it work? The question wasn't really directed at anyone in particular, but somehow we all answered at the same time. Yes. What happened next was the most intense 2 hours of my professional life. We transformed that conference room into a war room, with laptops scattered across every available surface, printouts taped to the walls, and enough coffee to keep a small army awake for a week. Janet took charge of redesigning the visual presentation, incorporating my experiential concepts into her existing creative framework. Marcus dove into market research, pulling demographic data to support the multi-generational approach. Michael worked on restructuring the timeline and budget projections to accommodate the expanded scope. And me? I found myself in the bizarre position of leading strategy development for a project I'd been excluded from just hours earlier. Okay, walk me through the heritage journey concept again, Janet said, not looking up from her screen where she was frantically redesigning slides. I need to understand the logistics before I can create supporting visuals. I grabbed a marker and started sketching on the whiteboard. Think of it as a physical and digital experience simultaneously. We create pop-up installations in major cities, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, designed like luxury showrooms, but each room represents a different decade of Henderson's history. So customers walk through 70 years of automotive evolution? Michael asked, typing notes as fast as I was talking. Exactly, but here's the key differentiator. It's not just about looking at old cars. Each room has interactive elements that connect that era's design philosophy to current lifestyle trends. The 1950s room might showcase how post-war optimism influenced their bold chrome details, and then demonstrate how that same spirit of innovation appears in their current electric vehicle line. Marcus looked up from his research. The demographic data supports this approach. Luxury car buyers under 40 are 60% more likely to make purchasing decisions based on brand story and values alignment rather than just product specifications. Perfect, I said, adding another layer to my whiteboard diagram. But we don't stop at the physical installations. Every experience gets documented and shared across social platforms, creating user-generated content that extends the campaign's reach organically. Janet paused her design work. You're talking about turning customers into brand ambassadors without them even realizing it. Exactly, and we give them reasons to share that go beyond typical social media marketing. Maybe they discover their grandfather owned the same model Henderson from 1967 that they're considering today. Maybe they realize the design elements they love in modern architecture actually originated in Henderson's 1980s concept cars. This is good, Dad said, reviewing our evolving strategy. But we need to make sure we're addressing Henderson's specific business objectives. They're not just looking for brand awareness, they want measurable sales growth in the 25-45 demographic.
Which brings us to the conversion strategy, I continued, moving to a clean section of the whiteboard. The Heritage Journey experience culminates in personalized consultations where participants can configure their ideal Henderson vehicle. But instead of a traditional sales pitch, they're working with brand historians who help them find the model that best connects to their personal story. Brand historians? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Henderson employees trained in both product knowledge and company history. They can explain how the engineering innovations in a customer's dream car connect to Henderson's legacy of craftsmanship, making the purchase feel like becoming part of an ongoing story rather than just buying an expensive vehicle. Michael was nodding as he updated our project timeline. This positions Henderson as premium lifestyle curators, not just car manufacturers. Right, and the digital component ensures we're reaching customers who can't attend physical installations. I added social media integration points to my diagram. We create virtual Heritage Journey experiences, behind-the-scenes content from the installations, and interactive timeline features where users can explore Henderson's evolution through different social and cultural movements. Janet saved her updated presentation file. I'm integrating these concepts with our legacy redefined messaging, but the execution becomes much more sophisticated. Instead of telling people Henderson is redefining luxury, we're letting them experience that redefinition firsthand. How's our budget looking? Dad asked Michael. Surprisingly manageable. The installations are expensive up front, but the digital components and user-generated content provide extended value at relatively low ongoing costs. Plus, if we position this as a multi-market campaign, Henderson gets national brand exposure for what they typically spend on regional advertising. Timeline? Dad continued his rapid-fire assessment.
Phase 1 installations could launch within 4 months, I said, checking my notes. Digital components can begin immediately, building anticipation for the physical experiences. Marcus looked up from his laptop. I found something interesting in Henderson's competitor analysis. Their main rivals are still using traditional luxury marketing approaches, celebrity endorsements, prestige positioning, exclusivity messaging. Nobody in the luxury automotive space is doing experiential storytelling at this scale. Which gives Henderson a first-mover advantage in their market, Janet added, updating another slide. They're not just getting a marketing campaign, they're getting a new category of customer engagement. Dad checked his watch. 45 minutes until Henderson arrives. Where are we on presentation readiness? The visual deck is complete, Janet reported. I've incorporated Mary Ann's experiential concepts throughout the creative strategy section. Budget projections and timeline documentation are finished, Michael added. Market research and competitive analysis are solid, Marcus confirmed. And the strategy framework is ready, I concluded, capping my marker. The whiteboard behind me looked like a beautiful mess of interconnected ideas, demographic charts, and campaign flow diagrams. Good. Now we need to address the elephant in the room, Dad stood up, surveying our assembled materials. How do we present this as a cohesive team effort when Henderson specifically requested Mary Ann as lead strategist? The question hung in the air, and I could see everyone calculating the professional implications. Janet had 15 years of creative experience. Michael had managed accounts worth hundreds of millions. Marcus had consulted for Fortune 500 companies. And here I was, 3 years out of college, about to lead the biggest client presentation in company history. I have a suggestion, I said carefully. What if we present it exactly as we developed it? Collaborative strategy with specialized expertise areas. Janet leads creative presentation, Michael handles account management and logistics, Marcus covers market research and competitive positioning, and I focus on the experiential strategy components that Henderson specifically requested. That actually works, Michael said slowly. It demonstrates our agency's collaborative capabilities while addressing Henderson's specific interest in Mary Ann's expertise. Janet nodded, and it's honest about how we've structured the team to maximize our strengths. Plus, Marcus added, it shows Henderson that they're getting not just Mary Ann's strategic vision, but the full support of our senior team to execute that vision flawlessly. Dad smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all day. That's exactly the right approach. Henderson gets the expertise they requested, and we demonstrate our agency's collaborative strength. 20 minutes before the meeting, we did a complete run-through. Janet's creative presentation was stunning.
She'd managed to visually capture the heritage journey concept in ways that made it feel both aspirational and achievable. Michael's logistics timeline showed Henderson exactly how we'd execute each phase of the campaign. Marcus's market research provided compelling evidence for why this approach would succeed where traditional luxury marketing had plateaued. And my strategy presentation? It felt like everything I'd learned in 3 years of proving myself had culminated in this moment. The concepts were sophisticated without being unnecessarily complex, innovative without being unrealistic, and directly aligned with Henderson's business objectives. One last question, Dad said. Marianne, are you ready to lead this presentation? I looked around the room at my colleagues, people who had excluded me from this project just hours earlier, but who had spent the last 2 hours working with me to create something better than any of us could have developed alone. I'm ready, I said, and for the first time in my professional life, I actually believed it. At exactly 2 o'clock, Elizabeth Henderson walked through our office doors, and everything we'd prepared was about to be put to the ultimate test. Elizabeth Henderson was nothing like I expected. When you're dealing with a luxury automotive empire worth hundreds of millions, you imagine someone intimidating. Sharp suits, cold handshakes, the kind of executive presence that makes junior employees stutter. Instead, Elizabeth walked into our conference room wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, carrying a leather messenger bag that looked like it had traveled the world with her. She was maybe 45, with gray-streaked auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of genuine smile that immediately put everyone at ease. But her eyes missed nothing. As she shook hands around the table, I could see her cataloging details, assessing personalities, and forming impressions that would probably influence a $12 million decision.
Miss Thompson, she said when she reached me, and her handshake was firm without being aggressive. I'm so glad we finally got to meet in person. Your work on the Riverside Motors campaign has been a case study in our marketing department for months. Thank you, Miss Henderson. I'm excited to hear more about your vision for Henderson's brand evolution. She settled into the chair across from our presentation setup, declining our offer of coffee but accepting a bottle of water. Before we dive into your presentation, I want to share some context about why we're here. Henderson Luxury Automotive is at an inflection point. For 70 years, we've built our reputation on traditional luxury values: exclusivity, prestige, heritage craftsmanship. Those values haven't changed, but the way people connect with luxury brands absolutely has. She pulled out a tablet and showed us some market research data. Our customer base is aging. The average Henderson buyer is currently 57 years old, up from 49 just 10 years ago. Meanwhile, our competitors are successfully attracting younger luxury consumers by positioning themselves as lifestyle brands rather than just automotive manufacturers. What's your timeline for addressing this shift? Michael asked, taking notes. Aggressive, Elizabeth replied without hesitation. We need to see measurable progress in the 25 to 45 demographic within 12 months, or we risk losing market position to brands that are already adapting faster than we are. The luxury automotive space is becoming increasingly competitive, and heritage alone isn't enough to secure future growth. What's your timeline for addressing this shift? Michael asked, taking notes. Aggressive, Elizabeth replied without hesitation. We need to see measurable progress in the 25 to 45 demographic within 12 months, or we risk losing market position to brands that are already adapting faster than we are. The luxury automotive space is becoming increasingly competitive, and heritage alone isn't enough to secure future growth. I leaned forward, immediately seeing the strategic opportunity. When you say lifestyle brands, are you thinking about companies that have successfully evolved their positioning while maintaining their core identity? Exactly. Brands that understand their heritage are an asset to be leveraged, not a limitation to be overcome. She closed her tablet and looked directly at me, which brings me to why I specifically requested your involvement in this project. Your multi-platform approach with Riverside Motors demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need, honoring automotive tradition while creating genuine connections with contemporary consumers. Janet cleared her throat. We're ready to show you how we've adapted that approach specifically for Henderson's unique position in the luxury market. Perfect. I'm all ears.
What happened next was the most professionally satisfying hour of my career. Janet's creative presentation was flawless. Her visuals brought the heritage journey concept to life in ways that made it feel both aspirational and completely achievable. When she showed Elizabeth the mock-up installations, complete with interactive design elements and customer flow diagrams, I could see genuine excitement building in our client's expression. Michael's logistics presentation was equally impressive. He'd calculated implementation timelines, budget allocations, and measurable success metrics that transformed our creative vision into a concrete business strategy. His projected ROI figures made Elizabeth take notes, and when he outlined the scalability potential, she asked him to send her the detailed financial projections. Marcus delivered market research that positioned Henderson's opportunity perfectly within current luxury consumer trends. His competitive analysis showed exactly how the heritage journey approach would differentiate Henderson from every other luxury automotive brand currently marketing to younger demographics. But when it came time for my portion of the presentation, something unexpected happened. Instead of nerves, I felt this incredible sense of clarity. Everything I'd learned about luxury marketing, everything I'd discovered through my work with automotive clients, every insight I developed about connecting heritage brands with contemporary consumers, it all came together at that moment. Elizabeth, what we're proposing isn't just a marketing campaign, I began, standing up and moving to our presentation display. It's a complete reimagining of how luxury automotive brands can create authentic connections with multi-generational consumers. I walked through the heritage journey framework step by step, but instead of just explaining the concept, I took Elizabeth through a hypothetical customer experience. Imagine a 32-year-old architect from San Francisco. She appreciates craftsmanship, values authentic brand stories, and has the income to afford luxury purchases. But she's never considered Henderson because she associates the brand with her father's generation. Elizabeth nodded, clearly following the narrative. She discovered our Heritage Journey installation through social media. Maybe a friend shared a post about the 1960s design room featuring Henderson's collaboration with famous mid-century architects. She's intrigued because architecture is her passion, so she visits the installation expecting a typical car showroom experience. I clicked on Janet's visual mock-up of the installation. Instead, she enters an immersive environment where she discovers that Henderson's design philosophy has been influencing luxury aesthetics for 7 decades. She learns that the clean lines she loves in modern architecture actually originated in Henderson's 1970s concept vehicles. She realizes that her appreciation for sustainable luxury aligns perfectly with Henderson's current electric vehicle innovations.
And then, Elizabeth asked, genuinely engaged in the story, she meets with one of our brand historians, not a traditional salesperson, but someone who can help her understand how a Henderson vehicle would fit into her lifestyle and values. By the time she leaves, she's not just considering purchasing a car, she's excited about becoming part of a brand story that connects her personal aesthetic values with 70 years of design innovation. Elizabeth was quiet for a moment, processing the implications of what I'd described. That's brilliant, she said finally. You're not trying to make Henderson appeal to younger consumers by abandoning our heritage. You're showing them how our heritage has been shaping their aesthetic preferences all along. Exactly, and the digital components ensure we reach customers who can't attend physical installations, while the user-generated content creates organic brand advocacy that extends the campaign's impact far beyond traditional advertising reach. What kind of measurable outcomes can we expect? She asked, turning to Michael. Michael consulted his projections. Based on similar experiential campaigns in adjacent luxury markets, we're projecting a 25% increase in brand awareness among the 25 to 45 demographic within 6 months, with conversion rates approximately 40% higher than traditional luxury automotive marketing approaches. And the total investment? $2.4 million for the first year, including 4 major market installations, comprehensive digital integration, and full campaign support. Subsequent years would be significantly lower as installations can be refreshed and relocated rather than built from scratch. Elizabeth made notes, then looked up with a smile that told me everything I needed to know.
This is exactly what we've been looking for. The approach honors Henderson's heritage while creating genuine emotional connections with contemporary luxury consumers. It's sophisticated without being pretentious, innovative without being gimmicky, and scalable without losing its personal touch. She closed her notebook and looked around the table. I want to move forward with this campaign. What's our next step? Dad, who had been quietly observing the entire presentation, finally spoke up. We'll prepare a comprehensive contract proposal, including a detailed timeline, deliverables, and success metrics. How quickly do you need this documentation? I'd like to review everything by early next week. We're announcing Henderson's brand evolution strategy to our board at the end of the month, and I want to include your campaign as a key component of that announcement. As Elizabeth gathered her materials to leave, she turned to me one more time. Marianne, I want you to know that your strategic vision is exactly why Henderson chose to work with Hartwell. This campaign has the potential to transform how luxury automotive brands connect with contemporary consumers. It's sophisticated without being pretentious, innovative without being gimmicky, and scalable without losing its personal touch. She closed her notebook and looked around the table. I want to move forward with this campaign. What's our next step? Dad, who had been quietly observing the entire presentation, finally spoke up. We'll prepare a comprehensive contract proposal, including a detailed timeline, deliverables, and success metrics. How quickly do you need this documentation? I'd like to review everything by early next week. We're announcing Henderson's brand evolution strategy to our board at the end of the month, and I want to include your campaign as a key component of that announcement. As Elizabeth gathered her materials to leave, she turned to me one more time. Marianne, I want you to know that your strategic vision is exactly why Henderson chose to work with Hartwell. This campaign has the potential to transform how luxury automotive brands connect with contemporary consumers, and I'm excited to see what we accomplish together. After she left, the four of us sat in the conference room for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. We'd not only saved a $12 million account that had nearly been derailed by internal miscommunication, but we'd apparently created a campaign strategy that exceeded the client's highest expectations. Well, Dad said finally, I think it's safe to say that our assumptions about team composition were significantly flawed. Janet laughed, but it was a good laugh, not a bitter one. I've never been happier to be wrong about a project approach. That heritage journey concept is going to revolutionize how we think about experiential marketing. The collaborative presentation worked perfectly, Michael added. Henderson got to see our individual expertise areas while understanding how we function as an integrated team. Marcus was reviewing his notes, and the market research supports scaling this approach to other heritage luxury brands. This could become a signature service offering for our agency. I looked around the table at people who, just hours earlier, had excluded me from this project entirely. Now they were talking about scaling my strategic framework into a core business offering. The professional validation felt incredible, but the personal growth felt even better. So what happens now? Dad smiled. Now we implement the most ambitious campaign in Hartwell's history. And Marianne, you're going to lead every aspect of the strategic development. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I belonged exactly where I was. 6 months later, I was standing in the middle of our Henderson Heritage Journey installation in downtown Los Angeles, watching a 28-year-old tech entrepreneur have what could only be described as an emotional breakthrough over a 1985 Henderson Meridian. My dad used to pick me up from school in one exactly like this, she was telling our brand historian, running her fingers along the car's distinctive chrome detailing. I always thought it was just an old car, but look at these design elements. They're in everything I love about modern architecture. The brand historian, Patricia Chen, no relation to our Michael, nodded knowingly. Henderson's design team in the 1980s was actually collaborating with several prominent architects on urban planning projects. The geometric patterns you're seeing here influenced luxury condo designs throughout the decade.
I watched the customer's expression shift from casual interest to genuine fascination. This was exactly what we'd envisioned during those frantic 2 hours of presentation prep, but seeing it happen in real life still gave me chills. Miss Thompson? A voice behind me interrupted my observation. I turned to find James Morrison, the installation manager, holding a tablet full of data that made my strategist heart very happy. What are the numbers looking like today, James?
Exceptional. We've had 437 visitors this week, with an average dwell time of 43 minutes. More importantly, 62% of visitors are requesting follow-up consultations, and our conversion rate to actual purchases is sitting at 38%. I did quick mental math. 38% conversion on high-intent luxury automotive customers was extraordinary. Traditional Henderson showrooms were averaging around 12% conversion, and that was considered good performance in the luxury market. Any demographic insights? That's the really interesting data. Our 25-35 age bracket represents 41% of total visitors, but they account for 53% of conversions. The experiential approach is working exactly as projected for younger luxury consumers. My phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth Henderson. LA installation numbers are incredible. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss expanding to 8 additional markets. Can you join the call? 8 additional markets. What had started as an experimental campaign was potentially becoming a complete transformation of how Henderson approached customer acquisition. James, I need to head back to the office, but can you send me the detailed visitor journey analytics? I want to understand exactly which installation elements are driving the strongest engagement. Already compiled and sent to your email. But Ms. Thompson, there's something else you should see. He led me to the digital integration station, where visitors could share their heritage journey experience across social platforms. The screen was displaying a real-time feed of posts tagged with #HendersonHeritage, and the volume was staggering. We're seeing an average of 200 social media posts per day from each installation location. But look at the engagement rates on user-generated content versus our branded posts. The data was remarkable. Posts created by Heritage Journey visitors were receiving engagement rates 3 times higher than Henderson's traditional social media campaigns. People weren't just visiting our installations, they were becoming genuine brand advocates who shared authentic stories about their experiences. This is incredible, James. The organic reach is extending our campaign impact far beyond what we calculated in initial projections. I headed back to the Hartwell office, my mind buzzing with the implications of what we'd accomplished. The Heritage Journey wasn't just meeting our success metrics, it was exceeding them in ways that validated every strategic decision we'd made. Dad was waiting in my office when I arrived, looking like someone who'd just received the best news of his professional life. Elizabeth Henderson called me 20 minutes ago, he said without preamble. Henderson Luxury Automotive wants to extend our contract through 2027 and expand the Heritage Journey concept internationally. We're talking about installations in London, Tokyo, and Sydney. I sat down heavily in my chair, trying to process what he'd just told me. International expansion? Full global rollout. They want us to adapt the Heritage Journey framework for different cultural markets while maintaining the core experiential elements. Marianne, this is the kind of client relationship that transforms agencies. What's the scope? $36 million over 3 years, plus performance bonuses tied to market penetration goals in each international location. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. This contract will allow us to double our staff, upgrade our technology infrastructure, and compete directly with the major Madison Avenue agencies. I stared out my office window at the Seattle skyline, thinking about how dramatically everything had changed since that Tuesday morning when I'd been excluded from the Henderson project. 6 months ago, my colleagues questioned whether I was qualified to contribute to their campaign. Now, those same colleagues were helping me implement a global marketing strategy that would define Henderson's brand evolution for years to come.
There's one more thing, Dad continued. Elizabeth specifically requested that you be promoted to Senior Vice President of Strategic Development with full authority over the Henderson account and any similar heritage luxury brand campaigns we pursue. Senior Vice President. At 26 years old, with 3 years of agency experience, I was being offered a position that typically required a decade of industry leadership. The professional recognition felt surreal, but the personal validation felt even better. Dad, can I ask you something honestly? Always. When you supported the team's decision to exclude me from the Henderson project initially, what were you thinking? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. I was thinking like a CEO who wanted to minimize risk on the most important pitch in company history.
I wasn't thinking like a father who should have recognized his daughter's capabilities, and I definitely wasn't thinking like a strategic leader who should have questioned why our strongest possible team didn't include the person our potential client had specifically requested. And now? Now I'm thinking that the best business decisions often require trusting people to exceed expectations rather than limiting them to meet assumptions. He smiled. Also, I'm thinking that I raised a daughter who's become a better strategist than I ever was. 3 weeks later, I found myself in Henderson's corporate headquarters in Detroit, presenting our international expansion strategy to their board of directors. The room was filled with automotive industry veterans, marketing executives, and financial analysts who controlled hundreds of millions in luxury brand investments. The Heritage Journey framework scales effectively across different cultural markets because it's fundamentally about emotional connection rather than specific cultural references, I explained, walking through our adaptation strategy for the London installation. British luxury consumers value tradition and craftsmanship, so our UK experience emphasizes Henderson's connection to classic British design principles while showcasing contemporary innovation. One board member raised her hand. How do you maintain brand consistency across such different cultural approaches? The core Henderson values remain constant: heritage, craftsmanship, innovation, luxury. What changes is how we help customers in different markets discover their personal connection to those values. A young professional in Tokyo might connect with Henderson's technological innovations, while someone in Sydney might be drawn to the brand's connection to adventure and exploration. Elizabeth Henderson looked pleased as she addressed the board. What Marianne and her team have created isn't just a marketing campaign, it's a new model for how heritage luxury brands can build authentic relationships with contemporary consumers while honoring their foundational identity. The board approved our international expansion proposal unanimously. Flying back to Seattle that evening, I reflected on everything that had changed since that phone call 6 months ago when Elizabeth Henderson asked where I was. The professional success was incredible, leading a multi-million-dollar global campaign, earning promotion to senior vice president, establishing myself as a strategic leader in luxury brand marketing. But the personal growth felt even more significant. I'd learned that belonging somewhere isn't about other people recognizing your value, it's about having the confidence to demonstrate that value even when others doubt it. The team that excluded me from the Henderson project wasn't malicious. They were making decisions based on limited perspectives and conventional assumptions. My phone buzzed with a message from Janet. Saw the Henderson board approved international expansion. Congratulations on building something incredible. Drink tomorrow to celebrate? 6 months ago, Janet had questioned my qualifications for the Henderson project. Now she was congratulating me on leading its global expansion. People can change their perspectives when presented with evidence that challenges their assumptions, but only if you're willing to provide that evidence consistently and professionally. As my plane descended towards Seattle, I looked out at the city lights and smiled. Tomorrow, I'd be back in the office working with the same colleagues who had once excluded me from this project, developing strategies for Heritage Journey installations across 3 continents. The difference was that now, nobody questioned whether I belonged there, including me. 1 year after the Henderson campaign launched, I was sitting in first class on a flight to Tokyo, reviewing final preparations for our most ambitious Heritage Journey installation yet, when the flight attendant handed me a newspaper that would change everything again. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Henderson Luxury Automotive acquired by German conglomerate in $2.8 billion deal. I stared at the words, reading them 3 times before the implications started sinking in. Volkswagen Group had purchased Henderson in what the article described as a strategic acquisition to strengthen their luxury portfolio in the American market. The deal had been finalized just hours before my flight departed Seattle. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and saw 17 missed calls from Elizabeth Henderson, 12 from my father, and 43 unread messages from various team members. The most recent text from Elizabeth simply read, "Emergency call in 2 hours. Everything changes now." The next 2 hours felt like the longest of my life. I sat in that airplane seat, 30,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, watching my career's biggest triumph potentially crumble in real time. The Heritage Journey campaign wasn't just our success story. It had become the foundation of Henderson's entire brand strategy. If new ownership decided to pivot away from experiential marketing, everything we'd built could disappear overnight. When I finally got Elizabeth on the phone during our layover in Vancouver, her voice carried a tension I'd never heard before. "Marianne, I need you to understand something crucial. The acquisition happened faster than anyone anticipated. Volkswagen's leadership team is flying to Detroit tomorrow to evaluate all current marketing initiatives, and the Heritage Journey campaign is their primary focus. What does that mean for our contract?" That depends entirely on how well you can present our campaign's value to executives who've never heard of experiential marketing and who are questioning why Henderson was spending millions on museum installations instead of traditional advertising. My stomach dropped. Did they see the Heritage Journey as museum installations? Worse, they see it as expensive brand tourism that doesn't drive direct sales. The preliminary reports they've received focus on our installation costs without contextualizing our conversion rates or customer lifetime value improvements. I was taking notes frantically as other passengers boarded around me. "Elizabeth, our conversion data is extraordinary. The Heritage Journey locations are outperforming traditional Henderson showrooms by 300%. I know that, you know that, but Volkswagen's marketing executives are used to approaches that prioritize immediate ROI over long-term brand building. They're questioning whether Henderson needs premium brand experiences when they could achieve similar sales results through conventional luxury advertising at half the cost. What's our timeline? You have exactly 72 hours to prove that the Heritage Journey isn't just creative marketing. It's an essential business strategy that directly impacts Henderson's market position and revenue growth." I spent the rest of my flight to Tokyo not preparing for our installation opening, but completely restructuring my understanding of everything we'd accomplished. The Heritage Journey wasn't just successful, it had fundamentally transformed how Henderson connected with customers. But success stories mean nothing if you can't communicate their strategic value to skeptical executives who measure everything in quarterly profit margins. When I landed in Tokyo, I immediately called an emergency video conference with the Hartwell team. Janet, Michael, Marcus, and Dad assembled in our Seattle conference room while I sat in my hotel room at 3 a.m. local time, surrounded by laptops, data printouts, and enough coffee to keep me alert for the next 48 hours. "Here's what we're dealing with," I began without preamble. "Volkswagen's acquisition team sees the Heritage Journey as an expensive experiment that could be replaced with traditional marketing approaches at significantly lower cost. They're evaluating all Henderson marketing initiatives based purely on direct ROI, not long-term brand value or customer relationship development." "What kind of data are they looking for?" Marcus asked, already pulling up our analytics dashboards. "Hard numbers. Customer acquisition costs, lifetime value increases, market share growth, competitive positioning advantages, everything that proves experiential marketing delivers superior business results, not just creative satisfaction." Janet was taking notes. "Do we have quantitative data that supports those metrics?" "We have incredible data, but it's scattered across different reporting systems and hasn't been consolidated into a comprehensive business case presentation. We need to transform 18 months of campaign performance into a strategic brief that demonstrates why the Heritage Journey is essential to Henderson's competitive advantage." "What's our biggest challenge?" Michael asked. I pulled up the preliminary Volkswagen evaluation report that Elizabeth had shared with me. They're comparing our campaign costs to traditional luxury automotive advertising, but they're not accounting for the extended customer engagement, organic social media amplification, or the premium pricing power that experiential marketing creates for luxury brands. "So we need to quantify the qualitative benefits," Dad concluded. "Exactly. And we need to do it in a way that makes financial sense to executives who've never seen experiential marketing deliver measurable business results." For the next 60 hours, while managing the Tokyo installation opening during the day, I worked with the Seattle team through the night to build the most comprehensive marketing performance analysis of my career. We calculated customer journey attribution models, analyzed social media engagement ROI, documented competitive differentiation values, and mapped the complete economic impact of the heritage journey across Henderson's entire business ecosystem. The numbers were stunning. Heritage Journey locations weren't just converting visitors at higher rates than traditional showrooms, they were attracting customers who spent 40% more on vehicle customization, recommended Henderson to friends and colleagues at twice the industry average rate, and demonstrated brand loyalty scores that exceeded luxury automotive benchmarks by 60%. These aren't marketing metrics, I realized during one of our late-night strategy calls. These are business transformation indicators. The heritage journey didn't just change how Henderson advertises, it changed the fundamental relationship between Henderson and their customers. Can you quantify that transformation in terms that will resonate with automotive industry executives? Dad asked. I think so, but it requires reframing our entire presentation approach. Instead of defending the heritage journey as a marketing campaign, we need to position it as Henderson's competitive differentiation strategy in an increasingly crowded luxury automotive market. Thursday morning, I walked into Henderson's corporate headquarters in Detroit carrying a presentation that represented everything I'd learned about strategic marketing, business analysis, and executive communication. The conference room was filled with Volkswagen executives, Henderson leadership, and financial analysts who would determine whether 18 months of work would continue or be discontinued immediately. Klaus Weber, Volkswagen's vice president of global marketing, got straight to the point. Ms. Thompson, we've reviewed your Heritage Journey campaign data, and we're struggling to understand why Henderson has invested so heavily in what appears to be experiential entertainment rather than direct sales marketing. I stood up, connected my laptop to their presentation system, and took a deep breath. Everything I'd built, everything the Hartwell team had accomplished, everything Henderson had achieved through the Heritage Journey campaign, it all came down to the next 45 minutes. Klaus, you're absolutely right to question the Heritage Journey if you view it as experiential entertainment. But what if I told you it's actually the most effective customer acquisition and retention system in the luxury automotive industry? I clicked to my first slide, which showed Heritage Journey conversion rates compared to traditional Henderson showrooms, traditional luxury automotive advertising, and Volkswagen's own premium brand customer acquisition metrics. The Heritage Journey isn't competing with conventional marketing approaches. It's delivering results that conventional marketing can't achieve. Our conversion rates are 300% higher than industry averages. Our customer lifetime value has increased by 47%, and our organic brand advocacy has generated social media reach equivalent to $12 million in traditional advertising spend. Klaus was taking notes, but his expression remained skeptical. These metrics are impressive, but they don't address the fundamental cost concerns. Why spend $2.4 million annually on installations when comparable results might be achievable through targeted digital advertising at a fraction of the investment?
Because comparable results aren't achievable through digital advertising, I replied, clicking to my competitive analysis slide. And here's why. What happened next would either save the Heritage Journey campaign or end my career as a strategic marketing executive. But I'd learned something important over the past 18 months. Sometimes the biggest risks create the most significant opportunities. The fundamental difference between the Heritage Journey and traditional luxury marketing isn't what we're selling, it's who we're creating, I continued, advancing to a slide that showed customer behavior analysis across 18 months of data. Traditional automotive marketing tries to convince people to buy cars. The Heritage Journey creates brand evangelists who become part of Henderson's story. Klaus Weber leaned forward, and I could see I had his attention. Explain what you mean by creates brand evangelists. Look at these social media analytics, I said, clicking through a series of engagement metrics. Heritage Journey visitors generate an average of 4 social media posts about their experience, reaching a combined audience of 12,000 people per visit. But here's the crucial difference. These aren't promotional posts. They're authentic stories about personal connections to Henderson's brand legacy. Klaus Weber leaned forward, and I could see I had his attention.
Explain what you mean by creates brand evangelists. Look at these social media analytics, I said, clicking through a series of engagement metrics. Heritage Journey visitors generate an average of 4 social media posts about their experience, reaching a combined audience of 12,000 people per visit. But here's the crucial difference. These aren't promotional posts. They're authentic stories about personal connections to Henderson's brand legacy. I pulled up a real example from our Los Angeles installation. This customer discovered that her grandfather had worked on the assembly line for the 1967 Henderson Meridian she was admiring. She didn't just buy a car that day, she purchased a piece of her family history. That story has been shared over 8,000 times across platforms, generating organic brand exposure that traditional advertising could never achieve. But does emotional connection translate to measurable business outcomes? Asked Dr. Sarah Mueller, Volkswagen's Director of Strategic Analysis.
Absolutely. I clicked on our customer lifetime value comparison chart. Heritage Journey customers spend an average of $47,000 more on vehicle customization, maintenance, and future purchases compared to traditional Henderson buyers. They're not just purchasing transportation, they're investing in ongoing relationships with the brand. The room was quiet as the executives processed these numbers. $47,000 in additional lifetime value per customer represented the kind of margin improvement that could justify significant marketing investments. More importantly, I continued, Heritage Journey customers are virtually immune to competitor marketing efforts. Our customer retention rates are 94% compared to 71% for traditional luxury automotive brands. When people feel emotionally connected to Henderson's heritage story, price competition becomes irrelevant. Klaus was typing notes rapidly. These retention figures seem exceptionally high for the automotive industry. They are, and they represent Henderson's most valuable competitive advantage in an increasingly crowded luxury market. I advanced to my competitive positioning slide. Every other luxury automotive brand is fighting the same battle, trying to justify premium pricing through features, performance, or prestige positioning. Henderson is the only brand creating genuine emotional connections that make price comparisons meaningless. Elizabeth Henderson, who had been silent throughout the presentation, spoke up. Klaus, what Marianne is describing isn't just marketing efficiency, it's market differentiation that our competitors can't replicate. The Heritage Journey leverages 70 years of Henderson history in ways that newer luxury brands simply cannot match. But could this approach be scaled across Volkswagen's other premium brand? Dr. Mueller asked. If the Heritage Journey is genuinely effective, why limit it to Henderson? I felt a surge of excitement. This was the question I'd been hoping someone would ask. Actually, we've already developed frameworks for adapting experiential marketing to different heritage luxury brands. The core principles, authentic storytelling, emotional connection, immersive brand experiences, can be customized for any brand with authentic heritage stories to tell. Klaus looked intrigued. What would that look like for Bentley or Lamborghini? Bentley's Heritage Journey would focus on British craftsmanship traditions and connection to luxury lifestyle evolution over a century. Lamborghini's version would emphasize Italian design innovation and the emotional thrill of automotive artistry. Same strategic framework, completely different emotional narratives. Are you suggesting that the Heritage Journey could become a standardized marketing approach across our luxury portfolio? Dr. Mueller was taking detailed notes. I'm suggesting that experiential marketing based on authentic heritage storytelling could become Volkswagen's signature approach to luxury brand differentiation globally. Instead of competing on features or performance, areas where distinctions are increasingly marginal, you'd be competing on emotional connection and brand legacy, which are impossible to replicate. The room fell silent as the executives considered the implications of what I'd proposed. I'd started this presentation trying to save Henderson's Heritage Journey campaign, but somehow I'd ended up proposing a complete transformation of Volkswagen's global luxury marketing strategy. Klaus closed his notebook and looked directly at me. Ms. Thompson, what you've presented isn't just a defense of the Henderson campaign, it's a vision for revolutionizing luxury automotive marketing across multiple brands and markets. That's correct. And you believe this approach would be more effective than traditional luxury marketing methodologies?
I thought about that Tuesday morning 18 months ago when I'd been excluded from the Henderson project because my team didn't think I was qualified. I thought about Elizabeth Henderson's phone call that changed everything, about presenting to skeptical colleagues, about proving myself repeatedly until no one questioned whether I belonged in the room. Klaus, I don't just believe it would be more effective. I can guarantee it will be, because it already is. The heritage journey has transformed Henderson from a struggling heritage brand into the fastest growing luxury automotive company in America. Those results aren't theoretical. They're measurable, scalable, and directly applicable to every heritage luxury brand in Volkswagen's portfolio. Klaus exchanged glances with Dr. Mueller, then turned back to me. What would you need to implement this strategy across our global luxury brands? My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. A dedicated team of experiential marketing strategists, partnerships with cultural institutions in major markets, and commitment to long-term brand building over quarterly revenue optimization. The initial investment would be substantial, but the competitive advantage would be permanent. Timeline for global rollout? 18 months for full implementation across Bentley, Lamborghini, and Porsche in North American and European markets. Another 12 months for Asian expansion. Klaus was typing again, but this time his expression suggested excitement rather than skepticism. Miss Thompson, Volkswagen has been searching for innovative approaches to luxury brand differentiation for the past 3 years. What you've presented today represents exactly the kind of strategic thinking we've been hoping to find.
He stood up and addressed the entire room. I'm recommending that we not only continue the Henderson Heritage Journey campaign, but expand it into a comprehensive luxury portfolio strategy. Ms. Thompson, would you be interested in leading that expansion as Volkswagen's Director of Global Experiential Marketing? The question hit me like lightning. Director of Global Experiential Marketing at one of the world's largest automotive companies. 18 months ago, my colleagues had questioned whether I was qualified to contribute to a single marketing campaign. Now I was being offered the opportunity to transform luxury automotive marketing across 4 continents. Klaus, I'm incredibly honored by that offer, but I'd want to ensure that Hartwell Marketing maintains its partnership role in campaign development and implementation. Absolutely. What you've built with your team represents exactly the kind of collaborative expertise we want to leverage globally. 6 months later, I was standing in the newly opened Bentley Heritage Journey installation in London, watching a retired British Air Force pilot discover that his grandfather had worked on aircraft engines that influenced Bentley's precision engineering philosophy in the 1940s. The emotional connection was immediate and profound, exactly what we'd designed the experience to achieve. My phone buzzed with a message from Dad. Just saw the Q3 numbers. Heritage Journey campaigns across all 4 brands are exceeding projections by 40%. Hartwell is officially expanding to offices in Munich and Milan to support European rollout. Proud of what you've built. I looked around the London installation, filled with visitors from 30 different countries, all discovering personal connections to Bentley's century-long legacy of automotive craftsmanship. In the corner, our brand historians were helping customers understand how their aesthetic preferences connected to decades of British design innovation. This was everything I'd envisioned during those frantic 2 hours of presentation preparation 18 months ago, scaled to a level I'd never imagined possible. But the most satisfying part wasn't the professional success or global recognition. It was the knowledge that I'd learned to trust my own strategic vision even when others doubted it. Another text arrived, this time from Janet. Saw the BBC coverage of the London opening. Remember when we thought you weren't ready for the Henderson project? Best mistake we ever made. I smiled, remembering that Tuesday morning when being excluded from a single campaign felt like the end of the world. Sometimes the biggest professional disappointments become the foundation for opportunities you never could have imagined. My phone rang with a call from Klaus Weber. Marianne, I just got approval from our board for Phase 2 of the global expansion. We're ready to discuss Heritage Journey implementations for our Asian luxury markets. Are you available for a strategy call tomorrow? I looked out at the London skyline, thinking about everything that had led to this moment.
From CEO's daughter struggling to prove herself to global marketing executive reshaping how luxury brands connect with customers across 4 continents. Klaus, I said, I'll always be available for conversations about creating authentic connections between heritage brands and contemporary consumers. That's exactly why I'm here. And for the first time in my professional life, I knew exactly where I belonged. But the story doesn't end there. 3 weeks after that phone call with Klaus, I found myself in an unexpected situation that would test everything I'd learned about leadership, strategy, and professional resilience. I was in the Porsche Heritage Journey installation in Stuttgart, Germany, reviewing final preparations before our grand opening, when my assistant forwarded me an email that made my blood run cold. It was from Amanda Richardson, the newly appointed Chief Marketing Officer at Genesis Luxury Vehicles, Henderson's biggest competitor in the American market. Dear Miss Thompson, the email read, Genesis has been closely monitoring the success of your Heritage Journey campaign, and we're prepared to offer you a position as Executive Vice President of Global Strategy at double your current compensation, plus equity participation in our company's expansion plans. We believe your innovative approach to experiential marketing would be perfectly suited to our brand's rapid growth trajectory. Double my compensation, equity participation, Executive Vice President at a company that was aggressively expanding into markets where Henderson had traditionally dominated. The professional opportunity was staggering, but it would mean abandoning everything I'd built with Henderson, Volkswagen, and the Hartwell team. I was still processing the implications when my phone rang with a call from Elizabeth Henderson. Marianne, I just received some concerning intelligence from our industry contacts. Genesis is planning to launch their own version of experiential marketing installations, and they're actively recruiting key personnel from successful luxury marketing campaigns. Elizabeth, I need to tell you something. I just received an offer from Genesis that's... I paused, trying to figure out how to explain the situation diplomatically. It's a significant opportunity that would require careful consideration. The line went quiet for several seconds. Marianne, I want you to know that Henderson and Volkswagen value your contributions immensely, and we're prepared to discuss whatever adjustments might be necessary to ensure your continued leadership of our global experiential marketing initiatives. It's not just about compensation, Elizabeth. Genesis is offering me the chance to build their entire global marketing strategy from the ground up, with unlimited budget and complete creative control. I understand the appeal of that kind of autonomy, but let me ask you something. Do you believe Genesis has the authentic heritage story necessary to make experiential marketing genuinely effective? That question stopped me cold. Genesis Luxury Vehicles had been founded only 8 years ago by a Korean conglomerate specifically to compete in the American luxury market. They had impressive technology, competitive pricing, and aggressive expansion plans, but they had no heritage story to tell. Their legacy consisted entirely of market research data and focus group insights. Elizabeth, that's an interesting point. The heritage journey works for Henderson because you genuinely have 70 years of authentic stories, design evolution, and cultural impact to share. Genesis would be trying to create emotional connections without any actual emotional history. Exactly. And more importantly, you've spent 2 years developing expertise in heritage brand storytelling. At Genesis, you'd be starting over with a completely different strategic challenge: how to create perceived heritage for a brand that has no actual heritage. She was right, but the Genesis offer represented financial security and professional recognition that was difficult to ignore. Elizabeth, I need some time to think about this decision carefully. Of course. But Marianne, before you make any commitments, I'd like you to consider one more factor. Klaus Weber has been discussing the possibility of promoting you to Executive Director of Global Luxury Marketing Strategy, with responsibility not just for experiential campaigns, but for comprehensive brand positioning across all Volkswagen luxury properties. Executive Director of Global Luxury Marketing Strategy. That would put me in charge of marketing initiatives across Henderson, Bentley, Lamborghini, Porsche, and any future luxury acquisitions Volkswagen might pursue. The scope of that responsibility was enormous, potentially affecting billions in revenue across dozens of international markets. What would that role entail specifically? Strategic oversight of all luxury brand marketing initiatives globally, with a team of regional directors reporting to you. You'd be developing marketing frameworks that could be adapted across different cultural markets and brand personalities while maintaining the experiential approach that's been so successful with the heritage journey. I was walking through the Stuttgart installation as we talked, observing German visitors discovering connections between Porsche's racing heritage and their own relationships with precision engineering and automotive performance. The emotional connections were authentic because Porsche's stories were authentic, exactly what Genesis couldn't replicate regardless of their budget or strategic ambitions. Elizabeth, can I call you back in 2 hours? I want to discuss the situation with my team at Hartwell before making any decisions.
Absolutely. And Marianne, whatever you decide, I want you to know that working with you has been one of the most professionally rewarding experiences of my career. I immediately called an emergency video conference with Dad, Janet, Michael, and Marcus. Within 15 minutes, I'd explained the Genesis offer, Elizabeth's counteroffer, and my uncertainty about which direction represented the best long-term decision. "This is actually a fantastic problem to have," Dad said after I finished explaining the situation. "2 years ago, you were fighting to be included in a single campaign presentation. Now you're choosing between leading global marketing strategy at one of the world's largest automotive companies or building an entirely new marketing department at their fastest-growing competitor. But which choice positions me for the most meaningful long-term impact?" I asked. Janet was reviewing notes she'd been taking during my explanation. "Marianne, let me ask you this. What kind of marketing challenges genuinely excite you? Developing authentic storytelling for heritage brands or creating perceived authenticity for brands without actual heritage?" When you put it that way, the answer seems obvious. I'm passionate about helping people discover genuine connections to brand stories that have real historical significance. Genesis would be asking me to manufacture those connections artificially. Michael nodded. Plus, staying with Volkswagen means continuing to work with the Hartwell team on the most successful experiential marketing campaigns in the luxury automotive industry. Genesis would mean starting over with untested strategies and unproven team dynamics. Marcus pulled up some industry analysis data. There's another factor to consider. Genesis is growing rapidly, but they're also burning through cash at an unsustainable rate while trying to establish market position against established luxury brands. Volkswagen represents stability, proven success, and long-term strategic vision. Dad leaned forward toward the camera. "Marianne, you've built something extraordinary with the heritage journey concept. The question isn't which opportunity pays better, it's which opportunity allows you to continue developing the marketing expertise that's made you one of the most sought-after strategists in the luxury automotive industry." They were right. The Genesis offer represented immediate financial gratification, but staying with Volkswagen meant continuing to refine and expand the experiential marketing approach that had become my professional signature. I called Elizabeth back and accepted the executive director position, then sent a polite but firm decline to Genesis. 1 year later, I was standing on the stage at the International Luxury Marketing Summit in Monaco, delivering the keynote presentation on authentic heritage storytelling in global markets to an audience of marketing executives from luxury brands across every major industry. The fundamental principle of effective heritage marketing isn't nostalgia, I explained to the audience of 500 professionals. It's helping contemporary consumers discover how historical brand values connect to their current lifestyle aspirations and personal identity. After my presentation, I was approached by executives from luxury watch companies, fashion houses, hospitality brands, and even technology companies who wanted to understand how heritage storytelling could be adapted to their industries and markets. The heritage journey had evolved from a single automotive marketing campaign into a comprehensive framework for luxury brand differentiation across multiple industries and cultural contexts. What started as an effort to save one excluded marketing professional's career had become a globally recognized approach to premium brand strategy. My phone buzzed with a text from Klaus Weber. Excellent presentation today. Board approved your proposal for Heritage Journey consulting services across non-automotive luxury brands. Ready to discuss expansion into fashion and hospitality markets? I looked out at the Monaco harbor, filled with luxury yachts representing brands that had built their reputations over decades or centuries of authentic craftsmanship and innovation. Each of those brands had heritage stories waiting to be transformed into emotional connections with contemporary consumers. The professional journey from excluded team member to global marketing executive had taught me something crucial. Authentic success comes from developing expertise so valuable that exclusion becomes impossible. When you create frameworks that transform entire industries, people don't question whether you belong in the room, they invite you to lead the conversation. And that's exactly where I intended to stay. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.